Good evening. I'm Maria Clave. I'm the 5th president of Harvey-Mudd College, and I am just delighted that you're joining us for the 3rd Annenberg Lecture this season. And on behalf of the college, I would like to express our gratitude to the Annenberg Foundation and to trustee and class of 1989 alumnus Howard DeShong and his wife, Jeanette, for providing us this opportunity each year to bring distinguished executives and industry leaders to Claremont and to share their valuable knowledge and experience. And I'm especially happy to welcome tonight's speaker, Sergio Monsalve, and also his son, Nico. Wave, Nico. Hi, Nico. And Nico has had, Nico is a 10th grade student at the Menlo School, and we currently have at least a couple of students enrolled at Harvey-Mudd from the Menlo School, and have had a number over the years. So we're really happy to have you here, and happy that you got a chance to sit in some classes today, including, I believe, a CS5 Black session. He's already taking AP Computer Science in Java, so, and he was thrilled he got the chance to actually see something about Python. So back to Sergio. Having earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Management and Science from Stanford and MBA from Harvard, Sergio has worked for the majority of his career as an entrepreneur and technology startup operator. He spent several years at eBay and PayPal, where he launched several new products that grew the consumer electronics categories from 150 million to 500 million. That's pretty impressive. Sergio also founded and served as head of new products at Cymerk and was an early product marketing manager at Portal Software. In 2007, he joined Norwest Partners as a venture capital investor, where he focuses on creating and growing early-stage software and mobile application startups that serve education and the future of work. Presently, he's working with the Stanford Graduate School of Education and leading their launch of a new EdTech initiative. So please welcome me in please join me in welcoming Sergio to Harvey-Mudd College. We're absolutely thrilled that you're here. And we're thrilled not just to have you here as a speaker, but to have you join our community and have a chance to discuss both hard things and easy things. And I know we're really going to enjoy this evening's lecture.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. Can you hear me okay? Is that good? Thumbs up in the back? Good. Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming. I'm hoping I don't trip here, so I'm going to maneuver through here. Let's see if it works. Yes. So before I go to the next slide, I'm going to talk to you about, when I was asked to come here by Maria and her team, they said, well, this is the Annenberg Leadership Speaker Series. And so I wanted to take a little slice of what leadership, what I think is a microcosm or a subset, let's call it, of leadership, which is what I call the entrepreneurial mindset. And that's the only authentic talk that I can probably give, because I don't consider myself a broad leader. I've been mostly focused on entrepreneurship in my life, so that's what I'll focus on. But it's particularly timely because of where we're living today and what times we're living through. So I will speak about the context as well. First, before I go there, I wanted to thank everybody. I've had a full day here at Harvey-Mudd, and it is just unbelievable, the reception that I received. I wanted to thank everybody here. I put them in order of how I met them. Amazing people. The students should be amazingly proud and happy to have these faculty, staff, and obviously you guys have fun here, even though you work. I learned today that you work extremely hard, probably a little too hard. Anyway, thank you to everybody. Let me spend a little bit more time on this slide. I wanted to set the context on who I am and why I'm here and why you perhaps want to listen to me a little bit. I was originally born in Mexico. And when I was 12, my dad had a business that he started in northern Mexico, and he came to us one day and said, listen, we have to move to northern Mexico or San Diego, either one, but we have to move because my business is there, and my family picked up 7 bags, very little money. He had invested a lot of his money into his business, small business, proprietary business. And so we moved my mom said, let's move to San Diego. So we're able to get a visa and move. We're very lucky to move, unlike many other immigrants where, they have harsher conditions to move. I had 2 lucky things. My mom was very focused on education, and 2, I had a little bit of money to move to San Diego when I was 12 years old. The challenge, though, I had a few challenges back then. It was a tough time. I was the shortest guy in my class. I was a little chubby. But more importantly, I spoke no English, 0 English. I had never taken an English class in my life. So here I am, a 6th grader, 7th grader, with a ton of challenges ahead of me, and really little money to deal with. So anyway, I moved to California, San Diego. I went to high school there. I focused on, being good at what I did in school. I mainly focused on English and taking sort of remedial English, as well as ESL, as well as sort of any English I could get my hands on. And frankly, didn't focus so much on the true passion that I had, which was math and science. So I had to not forego 2 years of math and science to actually learn English. Picked it up later in junior high and was able to then focus on what I truly loved. From there, I was lucky enough to be accepted to Stanford and was focused on engineering all 4 years. Became back then it was called industrial engineering. Loved the major. Again, came out with a lot of loans. Wasn't able to sort of pay for it myself, but like many people here, have some financial aid, was able to get that through Stanford. Loved my major. And I decided then to study business, because one of the things that I learned the most in my major at Stanford was a little portion of it was around investments, financial engineering. So it was a little bit of a discipline called operations research, how to optimize a company, right? How to optimize a business. And so I ended up applying to Harvard Business School, was able to get in, and very quickly I realized that I could combine business and what I had learned at Stanford and Silicon Valley, and go back to Silicon Valley to be an operator of and essentially a product manager or anything I could do in technology. So that's where I spent most of my life. I worked in, I'll tell you that there have been a lot of things that I've done. Some have worked, some haven't. I took a risk by founding my company and raising $7 million that I lost, and by venture capitalists, 0 return. I also did some good things, took a company public that we ended up selling to Oracle, worked early at eBay and eventually at PayPal, and a few other things, a couple companies that we ended up selling successfully. So look, I tried a lot of things, mistakes, some things worked, some things didn't. And that actually, when I look back, that's what led me to Norwest. Venture capital, if you think about it, is investing in companies that most of them are going to not make it. And it's okay. They're very talented people like you guys that work in these startups, and they just keep try new things. So when I look back in my career, it's been full of failure, and it's been full of tries, right? And it's really led me to kind of galvanize and sort of create something that I call the entrepreneurial mindset, which is what I'm going to talk a little bit more about. Hopefully that gives you kind of a background on where I come from. So some of the notable investments we've made in Norwest, I've had a chance to be part of, I think, most of these as an investor and a board member. I'm on the board of Udemy. It's a marketplace for education that's grown to be a pretty sizable marketplace. I think you guys probably have heard of Spotify, or maybe you use Casper Mattress. If you don't, it's a great bed. Uber, hopefully you've used Uber. Jet as a company we sold to Walmart. I'm a very proud investor of Kahoot, which is an incredible company inside K through 12 on engaging people with games inside the classroom. Kendra Scott jewelry company we sold recently. Adaptive Insights is a great software company that you'll hear more about in the next 2-3 months, hopefully. Anyway, some of these have gone public, some of these have sold successfully, but there's been a lot of learnings here. For these sort of dozen that I put here, there's been hundreds that have not made it. And that's okay, but that leads me to sort of take a step back and say, what makes these founders of these companies are sort of incredible, right? They take risks, they do some amazing things, some make it, some don't, but they keep trying. So I sort of took a step back and said, okay, for this talk, I want to sort of talk about an entrepreneur. What is an entrepreneur? So I looked it up, went to Wikipedia, and it said, hey, a person who organizes and operates a business taking on greater than normal financial risk. Okay, well, that doesn't say much. I mean, it's not a very good definition, I think. What actually I think we should be thinking about, and this is where I'll talk to you why it's important to have this, is not necessarily to be an entrepreneur, but to have an entrepreneurial mindset. And so I know it's hard to think about this when you're sort of spending 24 hours a day trying to make it through class, doing a lot of homework, you're busy, right? But don't forget this. This is the big picture, right? You should live your life as much taking your life with taking adventurous paths to your life, taking risks, doing things that make you uncomfortable. I think this, to me, is what has allowed me to sort of fail, succeed, be okay. I'm obviously I have a lot of scars, but that's okay. They've healed, right? So I want to talk to you a little bit more, drill down on what this means, and perhaps at the end offer things that you could do right now to perhaps start exercising these muscles, the entrepreneurial mindset muscles. So that's where I'll spend more of my time on. But before I do, I want to dig deeper into what this means. So when I look at an entrepreneurial mindset, I think of 5 criteria. And there's a lot of subsets underneath this. But number 1 is you want to be a courageous explorer, a risk taker. What does that mean? You just don't, it's okay to fail. It's okay to try again. It's resilience is kind of the name of the game. And it means that you're trying things that are hard. 2, incredibly curious. It's not okay to just ask 1 why. You should ask 5 whys and get to the depth of it. And again, some of these there's no news. You guys are probably writing the book on this, because to be a Harvey Mudd or part of the 5 C's here is you've already sort of tested into some of these things. It's just that perhaps you should continuously think about exercising these. Number 3 is be a creative, experimental, be a hacker, and be a tinker. By a tinker, I mean just try things. Get your hands dirty. Be in the lab of life. Number 4 is, I think the best entrepreneurs, or the guys that have the best entrepreneurial mindset, are not necessarily extroverted, but they, in fact, most of them are introverted in Silicon Valley or some of the companies that we invest in. They are very passionate and contagious around their vision and their mission. So you could be very introverted, I'd say Mark Zuckerberg comes to mind. I know he's been kind of in trouble lately, but he is not necessarily an extroverted leader, but he's extremely passionate. Or he from the beginning he sold that vision of what he wanted. He enlisted a lot of teammates to come work with him, a lot of investors to work. That's why I think number 4 is so important, because it requires a team to be able to create something out of nothing, not just the founder. And then number 5 is, I think a lot of people think the entrepreneurs are not empathetic folks, and they're very singly focused. They're very driven, but what they do have is this ability to sense, especially the consumer-focused ones. They have the ability to sense human needs They may not be directly empathetic like a nurse or a therapist, but they do understand human needs. And I think that's another skill that's important to develop and train. So keep those in mind, because I'm going to shift gears here and tell you why these skills are not necessarily, you could say, well, these were important 50 years ago, 100 years ago, so why are you telling me now, right? So this, I'm telling you, this is the most important skills now, because we have an amazing revolution coming. And it's already here, but it's only going to get more accelerated. We have things that you guys that are coming out of college will take benefit from these, from driverless cars, which are being excessively tested around my neighborhood, to artificial intelligence, robotics. These are all things that you'll see in your life that will actually change industries, and that they're already changing industries. So that's all good news. They will be life-changing for all of us. Now, take a step back, though. We've had industrial revolutions before, right? And what I worry about, or at least what I worry about temporarily, is that these industrial revolutions have created a lot of chaos from a jobs perspective, right? From the past industrial revolution, if you look at it in the 1800s, 80% of American jobs were in farms. Today, only 2%. Yet, we have an economy with good number of employment, right? You may argue there's not the right level of employment, or there's the wrong employment, but at the end of the day, people are employed in jobs that are not farms, and they're moving to, well, they move to the factories and beyond. So this revolution created a temporary displacement. However, think about this. I'm going to spend a little bit of time. This is a chart or a graph that I saw from Astro Teller, who's the CEO of Google X, right? Google X is the creators of the driverless car, and they have a bunch of other sort of moonshot projects. So he sort of threw out this. He said, in past industrial revolutions, what we've had is technology that's moving relatively linear at the same pace of what he calls human adaptability. So human adaptability is anything that is touched by humans, being systems that are human created, not technology created. So for example, political policies from government, education, in anything to do with negotiation, contracts, or something that requires multiple people to actually be involved and change something. So back then it was okay. The displacement, you have an industrial revolution, human adapts, and it's an orderly transition from the farm to the factory, and so we move alongside. What I worry about the most is that because of Moore's law and network effects, we have now hit an exponential curve in technology. So think about that. Things are moving so much faster. The Model T went to the Model S, one little letter, and it's dramatically different. And not only this, but this Model S is going to be driverless. It doesn't even have a gas tank. Over here, you needed to create roads, traffic signs, DMV. The concept of the DMV may not even exist here, the concept which we all are probably pretty happy about. The concept of traffic lights, the concept of roads may completely change, right? That's human systems, human processes that will have to adapt very quickly. Think of just Uber alone. They've turned the world of policy around about ride-sharing upside down. If you go to the airport, most of the airports don't know what to do about these ride-sharing companies, right? Just little things like that. So, what does that mean for you guys? There is a massive skills gap, right? But at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of jobs, right? There's transition from one type of job, 6 million unfilled jobs in certain areas, but yet there's 6.8 million that can't find work. So this transition is happening today. You see these headlines, and it's not news to you guys. The headline that I'm most focused on is this headline. 65% of the primary school kids the age of Nico's sister, will be in jobs that do not yet exist. So to me, okay, you could train for a certain job, but how do schools and sort of any educational institution, how can they be training for something they don't know? There hasn't been a job created, so are you really be able to train you? Well, the answer is probably not, but the skills that you can train for are the most important ones. And I go back to what those are. So now, luckily, there's been a lot of research so far, and hopefully more coming, about the future of work. And to me, the future of work means that we're going to demand skills that are two types of skills. Hard skills, which you guys are going to be A++ on, which is the ability for you to be technology aware, and not only that, but technology native. You will be able to shape technology like nobody else. That's the hard skills. And thus, I know that you spend 99% of your time, especially the MUD folks, thinking about the hard skills. No. 66%. 66%. And the other 33% or 34% is on. There you go. There you go. So I want you to spend both of your time on both, because the soft skills are very important. They're very important. And I don't mean taking classes in the soft skills. I mean exercising these, right? I call these the 5 C's. And actually, trust me, I didn't come up with it because this is my version of the 5 C's. The most important to me is courage, right? How do you really teach courage? How do you exercise courage? Courage means risk-taking, being okay to fail, being okay to venture out into outside your comfort zone, getting a little hurt, but hopefully not lethally. Just try things. Curiosity, creativity, collaboration, building character. I think this is not something people in business do enough of. I think ethically doing things for the right reason, to do right by people is very important. These, by the way, are not things that I came up with. This is based on a study, primarily a study from a bunch of folks, but the one that I like to quote is this University of Oxford study that basically ranks basically goes through an analysis and says what makes us innately human and what are the skills that are hard for computers to do down the road, either 10, 15, 30, 50 years from now. What is hard about some of the things that we can do? And they come up with things like multisensory decision making. So can you smell, see, hear, and make a decision? That computers can't do. Or how do you have a very complex negotiation? Or how do you become empathetic and become a very good at treating certain illnesses or people, or counseling folks or teaching folks? So these are skills that are innately human. And so this study, what they do afterwards is they rank all the top jobs, 500 jobs, by order of potential displacement in order of non-displacement, and things that you wouldn't things that you wouldn't think would be hard to displace. Like, for example, one that was surprising to me is software engineering could be easily displaced, right? If you focus on low-level stuff, if you focus on very creative, out-of-the-box thinking in software engineering, that's very hard to displace. Some of the hardest jobs to displace: therapists, teachers, nurses, because the empathy part is so important. So think about that. I mean, you could look up the study, but to me, I extrapolate and say, okay, well, these skills actually are naturally based on the entrepreneurial mindset. Not all of them, right? Because this is just one formula, but it does help you, even if you're never going to start a business, to have that mindset. So what I would say is, remember these, I put them up again here, but think about how you would exercise these. So I went back and I looked at what Maria had put together a while back, which is the six themes of Harvey Mudd's 2020 vision. This is, again, you may not have seen this, so this is probably more from a faculty and staff perspective, But the ones obviously all five or all six are very important. But the ones I would like to super highlight are number 4 and number 5. To me, engagement and contributions to society and being inclusive and helping diversity is so important, right? So things like, what can you do to exercise these? I mentioned stepping outside of the comfort zone is one. So what do you do every day that makes you uncomfortable, besides studying so hard, or just try something different? Seek to be empathetic, creative, collaborative, ethical. Those are sort of daily things or projects that you take on that may require you to exercise these muscles. 3 is, I would say, work internationally, work with other people, work in other cultures, other languages. I think, to me, I was forced into it by actually coming to this country, but it was the most character-building experience I've had in my life. And then finally, I would urge you to do simple things to help your community. One idea would be to go back to your high schools and talk about K through 12 STEM education, especially to people that are underrepresented. You guys are such leaders. Most of you came out top of your class in high school. You're revered as some of the leaders in your high schools. And it is so life-changing to go back to your high school and say, hey, this is where I am, this is what I did, and this is why K through 12 STEM is so important. Specifically that, but also the soft skills that I mentioned as well. With that, I think I want to leave you with one of my favorite charts or illustrations that basically tell what I do every day as an investor. I look at entrepreneurs that come to me with that plan, right? The nice, smooth to the top. The numbers are going to go 10x every year, and it's like a chart like this, and it's going to be worth $10 billion in 5 years, and right now you can pay $10 million valuation and you're good. And so if that worked out that way, it would be fantastic. But in reality, every single one of those logos that I showed you has gone through this. And so what I look for in entrepreneurs is the ability for the founder and the founding team to actually know how to deal with that ditch and that water and how to cross that hurdle. And that, to me, just goes back to grit, resilience, the ability to sort of sustain and be adaptable to change, adaptable to threats that come your way, which will be inevitable in your career. So with that, I open it up for questions.
Well, you can tell that I had not given him the pitch about HSA requirements before he gave the talk. So he didn't know how much we emphasize on both soft skills, the things that you have there, but also in learning across other disciplines. So I know we're going to have lots of great questions. So I'm going to hand you the mic when you raise your hand. Well, you would choose to be really hard to reach.
Hi, Sergio. Thank you so much for your talk today. So what I'm curious about is, like, how do you, when you're looking at all these companies, how do you choose between, like, Spotify, Lending Club, and, like, what makes them stand out? And also, how do you filter through the noise that you see in news and media to get down to the core of what you need to pick for in a company?
Yeah, good question. So the question's around how do we distinguish among these logos when they first come to us. It depends. This was a question I got this morning. I'm going to go back to that real quick because they all differ. It depends on the stage, frankly, but at the end of the day, the short answer is there's three things that make a company or at least get off the ground. It's capital, an idea, and the person or people that operate it. I'd say that capital and ideas are essentially a commodity. I have probably 5 ideas right now that I'd love to fund, but there's no entrepreneur to fund it. So the number one scarce resource is the the right mindset entrepreneur that could sustain the growth. Second thing is a TAM, a target addressable market that's big enough. So that's in the initiation. This is pre-market launch, pre-product launch, pre-product market fit, pre-growth and revenue. You'd look for a big market and a great entrepreneur that will know how to weave into success, right? As you get through the presentation and the pitch, you do look at the potential business model, although you pay less attention to it because it will shift. Most of the successes that we've had, I'll say that over half of them have pivoted into an idea. In fact, all of them. No, about half to 2/3 have given us a business plan initially that didn't turn out to be that, right? So I think it's very important to have the adaptability to kind of pivot into success as an entrepreneur.
Hi, thank you for speaking today. I was curious about personal brands. So I really love the idea of getting out of your comfort zone and failing. But then in terms of like protecting your personal brand and like showing that you're resilient, like how do you build that so that you're asked to do really cool projects as someone who's asked to do cool projects, even though you have failed in the past? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it depends the context, right? I think you're speaking more in the context of being in a company and being asked to be part of cool projects throughout the company. Yeah. So in the ideal company, and I know a lot of companies, there's no perfect company, but what I would do is it's so important as you start a job to find yourself in a team that supports you, and perhaps you even find an informal mentor. And that's your support mechanism so that you could actually bounce off ideas, take risks. Those are the best type of companies where you could actually have a mentor and be able to be supported by taking risks. Now, if the company is not doing that for you and they sort of punish you for failure, then I would argue that's not the right type of company, right? And unfortunately, there's a lot of those companies out there. So I'd be careful, first and foremost, to pick the right company and pick the right team and mentor within that company that's going to hire you. That's the best I could do, but not every company is perfect.
This is kind of related to that last question. You may have already answered it some just now, but you really underscored the importance of being comfortable with failing again and again. And how were you able to build that comfort over your career?
Oh man, I could say something crass and just don't give a crap and just keep getting back up and go, right? I mean, I think one of the things that came up at lunch that I like to exercise is have a bigger purpose, right? For me, is when I think back on why did I do all these things and try all these things and got kicked out of VC offices, and then I got money and then I lost it. I think I have a chip on my shoulder, and it's okay because I wanted to prove something, and now that's why I'm doing EdTech, because I don't want many people to suffer through what I had to suffer in terms of not having access to education early on, or not being able to speak English, or whatever else. Just you should be able to learn whatever you want to learn in today's environment because it's a click away. So I think the way I would practice that is think about things that really make you passionate, that are beyond just the immediate, like, oh, I got to get good grades, or I got to get a good job, or I hate, that's just not as important as what is your northern light and where do you want to go, and what makes you passionate. And that just makes me passionate to help other people build big businesses, right? And do it in a way that is good stuff, right? Unfortunately, I passed on, nothing against Snapchat. I love Snapchat, but I didn't feel like it was as mission critical as Udemy, for example, where it's educational, right? And so I like mission-driven companies.
Olivia.
Hi. I'd like to ask a follow-up to the question about what venture capitalists look for when they're evaluating companies. So when you're talking to an entrepreneur and you're trying to decide whether you think that they're the kind of person who can make their company succeed, what exactly do you look for?
The person?
Yes.
Yeah, so when I look for these criteria right here, sorry, so when I'll give you a few of the tips. I think it's very hard to assess these, but for example, courageous explorers, that's a criteria that I look for, and we all look for is, what have you done that's hard? That's hard and where you've ventured outside your comfort zone. So there's a resume everybody kind of puts up their bio or pitches it to us and gives us their chronology of what they've done. The transitions of how they make decisions from job to job, from school to job, from job to school, they're so important because it shows you're making a life-changing decision. And I just want to understand how much did you venture out of your comfort zone to make that decision, for example. That's just one example. I spent a lot of time with the entrepreneur just talking about their life, like how they grew up. Oftentimes the chip on your shoulder thing, it's actually apparent in most founders. So it comes from just a deep motivation to do things, right? Why do I want to build this company and make it hard for myself? And so you have to have a bigger purpose, and you try to get through questioning to try to get through the motivation. Otherwise, if they don't have a bigger purpose and they're just doing it to get rich quick, then the first sign of trouble, they're gonna fold, right? And they're gonna go, and that's not helpful for anybody. So I think it's things like that I try to assess. A lot of referencing too. I try to ask as many people that have known the person how that person really is, their psychology, their character, try to assess their passion. The passion you could assess by what kind of co-founders or advisors they've been able to get to work with them, even though it's just one person, one idea, or maybe two people, one idea, no money. So have they been able to be magnetic and bring people to the bandwagon to work with them, right? Things like that.
Hi there. As you look back on your life and your career and think about your experiences you've had, are there things that you wish you did differently or things that you regret? And are there any examples you have of that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. A lot of things. I would say in general I've been more lucky than good. I would have liked to have, but in the case, well, I'd say a few things. One is I wish my engineering at Stanford would have been a little bit more coding, because today, back then it was industrial engineering, but I think being able to be more agile with computing and understanding systems, I think would come in a lot more handy today. But I was not that type of person. So I think coding and just being comfortable. You don't have to be the developer, but just get comfortable with technology. I would say that starting my company, I learned a lot. I wish I had taken, instead of, after failing at my Cymerc and raising a lot of venture capital, I went straight to eBay. I needed the money. I needed to get back on my feet, and I got a job at eBay early on, which turned out to be a good decision. So no regrets there. But I wish I'd taken at least a little bit of introspective time to be even more thoughtful about my experience as a founder. That actually trickled in over many, many years, and I kind of was very sort of introspective about it, but I wish I had just sort of taken myself back and taken a breath and said, okay, what went wrong here so I can learn faster and better. And it just took me a while. So in general, I say those are probably two examples. And obviously, I wish in Norwest that I wouldn't have made a few investments that turned out to be zeros, right? And obviously, you take risks, but that's what you have to do.
So about a year ago, I had an email from a MUD student who graduated in 2012. And she said that, so she had been working and earning a fairly good salary for a few years after she got out, and she had decided that she was going to do something totally crazy. She and two of her friends were quitting their job, and they were going to do their own company and totally bootstrap it. And they were, their idea was to do a mobile app for activists to basically to enable people who had a passion about wanting to change the world around something to be able to list their platforms. I mean, to on her platform be able to list what their objectives were, what actions they wanted their followers to take, and just inspire people to change the world. And I just want to know what advice you would give her. And then I'll tell you what she's doing.
Great. Oh, I think can you hear me? Sure. No, it's okay. It's okay. What advice I'd give her is if I'd want to make sure and ask her that how committed she is to the idea, and make sure she's doing it for the right reasons and she has a really deeper purpose. And once I know that she is, then I would say to go for it. And then I'd give her advice around the business model that she would probably want to pursue, depending on whether she wants a .org or a .com, that she could fund that idea. She could bootstrap it, but eventually she'll need some grants or funding depending on what it is. There is one incredibly successful company that has done that, is Change.org, and I have a huge respect for those folks, and they never came to venture capital money because they turned it into a non-for-profit. So ultimately, if you have a startup, it doesn't have to be a .com or an app or something for profit. It could be a .org where you make it for non-for-profit. So I'd say those few things. What is she doing now?
Okay, so I just had a second conversation with her today, and so first of all, I am going to refer her to connect you with her,
Yeah.
because she's at a point where she's possibly willing to take a relatively small amount of venture capital, like 100K maybe, like pretty low.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so here's the really good news. So I asked those questions. Whew. Since I think I might have been her primary advisor. The other thing she asked me for at the time, this is Malice Kasarian, for any of you who know her. The other thing she asked me was she really needed to get more PR because she needed to get users who would actually use the app once it became functional. And so I put her in touch with our PR folks, and there's a story about her and what she's doing coming out in our magazine next month. But very fortunately, the freelance person who wrote the story about her liked the story so much that she got permission to also write a story about her for PC Magazine, which came out earlier. And the bottom line is, all of a sudden, she is the hottest thing because the political folks, they are totally clueless about technology. And so she has created an app. And so just last week, she was presenting at the Progressive Caucus, which had one senator, that was Elizabeth Warren, and 35 Congress people. And she was the hit. And everyone's super excited about this. And so the conversation I had today was how are you going to monetize? And I thought she had a really pretty good answer, but you are way better at this than I am.
Happy to talk to her, yeah.
And I am definitely going to connect you. But for me, what I loved is this is a pretty introverted person, really passionate about it, was willing to give up her day job, which was relatively high paying, to just do this.
Yeah.
And I think as I go down the list of characteristics, she was doing really well on all of them.
That's great.
So
I'd love to meet her, yeah.
yeah, you would love to meet her. She's awesome. Any more questions before we thank Sergio for his talk? Okay, we're going to say thank you. There's a dessert stuff out there. And he'll also be here for a little while if you want to ask personal questions. But I think this was just incredibly inspirational, so thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you.